to Chew Bubblegum, recorded from a secret location in the city that moves mountains.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Here to Chew Bubblegum, Episode 4. Thank you very much for being here. My name is Goose, and before we get started, I want to thank everybody for the emails and texts and phone calls, checking on me since the last show. I am feeling a lot better. I still get a little dizzy and lightheaded every now and then, but I am almost back to 100%. Also, I want to say hello to our listening audience. Our listening audience is growing by leaps and bounds. We have listeners in the United States, New Zealand, Ireland, the United Kingdom, the Philippines, Singapore, Nigeria. We recently added Germany and also our neighbor to the north, Canada. Hello, guys, and welcome to Here to Chew Bubblegum. You can always contact us at Here to Chew Bubblegum. You can give us a call, leave us a voicemail, or text us. Just call 606-373-3396. You can also email us. You can email me, Goose, at heretochewbubblegum.com, or Cronkite. If there's a news story that you want to hear him report on or share something with him, you can email Cronkite at heretochewbubblegum.com. Well, hope everyone has had a good week. I'm very excited to be back. We kind of have a special announcement. I'll just go ahead and get this out of the way. All the details are not worked out yet. It's still an ongoing process, but it is very possible that Here to Chew Bubblegum may be coming to a local radio station in our area. It's possible that we could get a 4-show trial deal, and if that works out, it could be a weekly thing. Again, the details have not come full circle yet, and I will keep you updated on those as they become available. Digging into some listener email. Greg from Tennessee writes, "Welcome back, Goose. I was wondering what had happened. I'm so glad that you're feeling better and that the show is back on." Well, thank you very much, Greg. That really means a lot to us at Here to Chew Bubblegum. Michael from Kentucky emailed, "Hello, I started listening to your show a few days ago and I really enjoyed it. It's a different kind of podcast than what I normally listen to, but I found myself going down a rabbit hole on the UFO train story that happened here in Kentucky. How did you find out about that?" I actually found out about that, I guess, 5 or 6 years ago. I was just doing some research on some, I think maybe Kentucky Unsolved Mysteries or something to that effect, and I came across that, and that story had always kind of fascinated me and struck a chord with me. And we do have an ongoing investigation on that. It still is ongoing. But we will keep you updated on that as progress comes to light, so to speak. Getting back to some more listener emails. Brandon from Indiana said, "Welcome back. Hopefully you're back for good and feeling better. Have you ever heard about the Philadelphia experiment? If not, you should do a show on it. I think that would be a good subject to hear and to hear your thoughts on." Well, thank you very much, Brandon. I actually have heard of that. What I try to do at Here to Chew Bubblegum is I try to do a show where things you may not have heard of that are not necessarily mainstream. Try to shed some light on those. I do think that the Philadelphia experiment is very interesting, and we could possibly do a show on that later on in the future. I will give you a heads up. We will be doing some tribute shows next year to the late, great Art Bell. He's the guy that started all of this as far as talking about UFOs, time travel, other dimensions. Him and his classic Coast to Coast show and his Midnight in the Desert show. So that is something that we're working on next year, and we will be doing probably at least 2 shows, tribute shows to Art Bell, possibly on his birthday and then on the date that he passed away on. Continuing on with some listener email. Tori from the United Kingdom wrote, "A friend of mine told me about your show. I listened to it on your YouTube page. Have you thought about doing any live shows on YouTube? Tori, actually, yes, I have. Myself and Cronkite have talked about that. We do have some new gear and audio equipment coming, and that is something that we do hope to do. If we don't do a live show right off the bat on YouTube, we do hope to do a pre-recorded show. I would love to do a live show, and slowly but steady, hopefully we will get to that point someday. Our last listener email, we had a lot of emails, so I just picked like 5 of the best ones. Jason from Texas said, "Here to chew bubblegum. Hello. I'm a new listener and just wanted to tell you that I enjoy the show. Keep up the good work." Well, thank you very much, Jason from Texas. Texas is my favorite state to visit. Again, you can always contact us here at Here to Chew Bubblegum. You can email me, Goose, at heretochewbubblegum.com, or you can email Cronkite at heretochewbubblegum.com. You can also call, text, or leave a voicemail. It's easy to do. Just dial 606-373-3396. That's 606-373-3396. Well, our question of the week. It has been a while since we've had a question of the week. Our question of the week for this week: do you think disclosure will happen in 2021? And by disclosure, I mean, do you think the government will say, yes, UFOs exist? Yes, there is life on other planets. Question of the week: do you think disclosure will happen in 2021? You can also call, text, leave a voicemail, email us, or go to our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, and let us know what you think. Will disclosure happen in 2021? Well, we're going to take a short break and be right back with the Solar Warden Project and the John Swift Lost Silver Mine.
Are you a horror movie fan?
Yeah, I dig horror movies.
Are you searching for a great internet horror talk radio show to listen to?
Why, sure, that sounds quite spiffy.
Then you need to tune into deadpit.com. It's the original horror talk radio show. Dead Pit is a show by the fans and for the fans. Uncensored and unbiased opinions are the goal of the show, giving fans honest reviews on new films and vintage classics of the horror genre. Make deadpit.com your #1 horror station destination.
Do you have a Roku device? Do you want to escape the everyday? Then download the Edge TV. That is the Edge TV on your Roku device, spelled capital T, capital H, #3. Let James, Stacy, Greg, and the rest of the gang keep you entertained. The Edge TV, available now on Roku.
Hey folks, it's John the Bod, aka the Bod Father, and you're listening to Here to Chew Bubblegum. You will not be disappointed. Check it out.
And welcome back to Here to Chew Bubblegum. Don't forget, coming up in this show, we will have an interview with the Creepy Kentuckian from deadpit.com. Okay, so segment 1 this week, we're going to be talking about Solar Warden, the secret space program. Since approximately 1980, a secret space fleet code named Solar Warden has been in operation and unknown to the public. Is it nonsense? Is it a conspiracy? Or is it simply sensitive information that will cause an uproar around the world? One NASA employee representative confirmed that this was a real program and that it was theirs. It was terminated by President Obama in 2010, and it was not a joint program with the Department of Defense. The NASA rep also said that any calls or requests for public request information should be directed to the Johnson Space Center. Okay, now, if you listen to the last show we did last week, when Gary McKinnon hacked the computers, he also hacked the Johnson Space Center. So it's kind of funny that you should direct any questions through there. People have ran open records requests through the space-related directories. They've not heard anything, and they're waiting on people with commands to follow them back. The Solar Warden Project was not only classified by the U.S. government, but also by the United Nations Authority. So you might think, where does all this information come from? Well, a few people and many others have tried hard to find out the truth. Some have succeeded with leaked information or by simply asking questions, while others have had people in government departments slip up and give away some information. So, what happened when Darren Perks asked the Department of Defense about this project? Well, we're not really sure, but one notable contributor to this story is, like we talked about in the show last week, Gary McKinnon. When Gary McKinnon hacked into the U.S. command computers several years ago, he learned the existence of non-terrestrial officers and fleet-to-fleet transfers. That's what we talked about in the last show, where Gary basically said that he saw a list of, I think it was 8 to 9 ships that the USA had made. The United States government had made these unidentified flying objects, and they were piloted by ordinary people. The story goes on to say that McKinnon's is the one that brought most of the Solar Warden Project to light, and it is the biggest, and that he committed the biggest computer hack of all time. He could have faced up to 70 years in prison, but that didn't happen. McKinnon also found out about ships and crafts within Solar Warden. He said there was approximately 8 cigar-shaped motherships, each no longer than 2 football fields, and 43 scout ships. The Solar Warden Space Fleet operates under the U.S. Naval Network and Space Operation Command. Now, if you do any research into UFOs, if you do that and you dig, you always, me personally, I've always saw the U.S. Navy mentioned in some shape or form as investigating or pursuing. Their name always comes up. So that leads me to believe that, what we've been told about the Solar Warden Project is absolutely 100% true. When McKinnon hacked the computers, it said there were approximately 300 personnel that worked at the facility, with the figure rising. Solar Warden is said to be made up of the U.S. Aerospace Black Projects contractors, people from Canada, United Kingdom, Italy, Austria, Russia, and Australia. It's also said that the program is tested and operated from a secret military base, such as Area 51, in Las Vegas, in Nevada, and that goes back to the Bob Lazar story. Some people think that what Gary McKinnon hacked and told about is nonsense, while other people claim that it is 100% real. Whether what McKinnon saw as part of the Solar Warden Project, a military experiment, people don't know, and they want to find out. Which brings us back to our question of the week. Do you think disclosure will happen in 2021? And by disclosure, I mean, do you think the government will say that, yes, UFOs do exist, which they kind of already did a little bit this year, but I'm talking about full disclosure. Or do you think that the government will not say anything? Me personally, and I'm not getting into politics here, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show, with the way things are right now in the United States, specifically in the government, the highest form of leadership, I think that it's very possible next year that somebody could give disclosure. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to go into detail because this is not the show to discuss politics. But what do you guys think? Email myself, Cronkite. at HereToChewBubblegum.com and let us know. Goose at HereToChewBubblegum.com or Cronkite at HereToChewBubblegum.com. Again, our question of the week, do you think disclosure will happen in 2021? Okay, moving on. The legend of John Swift's silver mine. Hidden treasure. Okay, I have been fascinated with this story for probably 20 years. 20 years ago, there wasn't a whole lot of information on the internet about it. About probably 14 years ago, when I was into independent filmmaking, I actually wanted to do a documentary on this where we would go out and try to hunt for the John Swift silver mine location. The story of John Swift's lost silver mine is one of the great legends and mysteries in Appalachia history. The story dates all the way back to 1760, when an Englishman named Jonathan Smith, also known as John Swift, is said to have discovered a large silver mine inside a cave in the Appalachian Mountains. The location of the mine has been the subject of much debate, research, and speculation for over 250 years with no conclusive answer. The mountains of eastern Kentucky and southwest Virginia have been the most frequent rumored locations of the mine and its buried treasure. If you've never heard of the John Swift silver mine and you live in this area, hopefully you'll do research after you hear about it, because this still to this day just fascinates me. The legend, some say, is based on a journal written by Jonathan Swift himself, and claims that he was led to a cave filled with silver ore by a man named George Munday. Munday was allegedly held captive by the Shawnee Indians, where he'd learned of the vast silver deposit. Now, if you do a lot of research on this, you will realize back in 1760 that the area that some people think that the treasure was, which is in Pike County, near Elkhorn City, near the Breaks Park. Some people say it's in Wolfe County, with the Red River Gorge area. Some people say it's in Letcher County, and Harlan with the Pine Mountain area. At that time in 1760, Kentucky was part of Virginia. And so those would have been Virginia territories. Okay. Some other variations of the story claims that Swift discovered the cave while pursuing a wounded bear. Swift Journals goes on to claim that he went to the cave for 9 years mining the silver and then later burying some of it in other locations throughout the area. In 1769, Swift finally ceased mining and barricaded the cave due to the threat of Indian attacks and internal conflict between him and his crew. Before he could return to the mine, Jonathan Swift is said to have gone blind and spent his final days in Bean Station, Tennessee. Upon his death, Swift is said to have left his journal along with a map describing the location to his caretaker, a widow known as Mrs. Renfro. Now, some people say that karma got Jonathan Swift, and that's what caused him to go blind. The story goes that he had these guys that were helping him, and there was, like the story said, it was an internal struggle. So they claim, some people do, that one night that Jonathan Swift killed all those men to keep the location of this mine a secret. And after that, he went blind. Okay, he'd already wrote in his journal, already had the map, and years pass, and he's blind, and he tries to get people to go with him, to take him, to guide him to find the location. They were unable to, and never found the location. A map allegedly showing the location of Swift's silver mine. Jonathan Swift's journal gave descriptions, but they are generic. For example, some of the treasure is said to have been buried by the fork of a white oak and in the rock of a rock house. Jonathan Swift himself is a subject of much debate. Some people say that he was a pirate. Some people claim that he was a mountaineer. Some people say that he was a explorer. Some people say that he was that traded with the Indians, that he was a counterfeiter. Some stories claim that Swift murdered his crew at the end of their last excursion in the heat of greed and was cursed with blindness, preventing him from ever relocating the mine. there is, and I don't know the exact location of this, but there is some initials carved in a rock, JS. And I think this may be in Wolfe County. I'm not really sure on that. I need to go back and freshen up on this story, but I've researched this for years. And some people say that Jonathan Swift never existed. Some people say that he was here before Daniel Boone. A few historians feel that Jonathan Swift is a work of fiction and was inspired by the novel Gulliver's Travels. I was not alive in 1760. None of us were. The story myself, to me, I just think is fascinating. Over the years, many people have searched in vain for the lost silver mines, including a famous Kentucky pioneer, James Harrod. In 1792, he was on search for the mine. He left home and never returned. His body was never found, and his family speculated that he'd been lured into the woods and murdered. Others have been rumored to have found the mine and some of the treasure that it was hidden. The most notable being Dickinson County, Virginia resident Solomon Mullins. Known as Money-Making Sol and Counterfeiting Sol, he was well known for his counterfeiting operations. Mullins had mixed pure silver with other minerals to produce his own phony currency, leading many to ponder how he was able to get so much pure silver. Although Money-Making Sol never revealed where he got his silver, many locals speculated that he found it in one of the caves near Pine Mountain in what is now called Clintwood. There is still a speculation that it was even there, and there's a section of the Pine Mountain known as Sol's Cliff in the area that honor him. Whether you believe in the Jonathan Swift's lost treasure mine or not, it's still a fascinating story, and each year Campton, Kentucky and Wolfe County host an annual Swift Silver Mine Festival, featuring a parade, street vendors, music, and a scavenger hunt inspired by the legend. And that was just a brief, I'd like to talk about that story again later on in some future shows. That was just a brief synopsis if you've never heard of the Jonathan Swift Silver Mine. We're going to take a break and come back with news, and then following news, we will have the interview with the Creepy Kentuckian.
Howdy, folks. This is the Creepy Kentuckian from deadpit.com, and you're listening to Here to Chew Bubblegum.
Are you a horror movie fan?
Yeah, I dig horror movies.
Are you searching for a great internet horror talk radio show to listen to?
Why, sure, that sounds quite spiffy.
Then you need to tune into deadpit.com. It's the original horror talk radio show. Dead Pit is a show by the fans and for the fans. Uncensored and unbiased opinions are the goal of the show, giving fans honest reviews on new films and vintage classics of the horror genre. Make deadpit.com your #1 horror station destination.
It's now time for the news, with Cronkite on here to chew some bubblegum.
Good afternoon, here to Chew Bubblegum Nation. I'm Cronkite, and this is the news. The Pentagon says it has found off-road vehicles that are not made of this earth. For decades, disclosure has been one of, if not the most talked about topics in the UFO and alien community. Now it's happening right before our very eyes, and most of us seem oblivious to the magnitude of what's actually going on. In March, astrophysicist Eric W. Davis gave a classified briefing in the United States Defense Department on a discovery that, if disclosed in virtually any other time, would be front row, center in the news cycle of every newspaper, TV broadcast, and radio broadcast across the country, if not the world. Instead, it has been mostly cast aside as an afterthought in a time of coronavirus hysteria. The briefing focused on what Davis called off-world vehicles not made of this earth. In other words, Davis, who spent years working as a consultant in Pentagon UFO program and now works as a defense contractor, has officially spilled the beans. Spaceships, aka UFOs, are real, and it's something that we have most likely known about for a very long time. The UFO program no longer has to hide in the shadows. Davis's bombshell quote came in the latest UFO report from the New York Times, which has owned the beat for the past several years, according to the report from nymag.com. In December of 2017, a paper reported on the existence of Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, an effort by the Pentagon to investigate UFOs that was supposedly ended in 2012. Held as a historical inflection point in our attitudes regarding UFOs, it's implied the same message as the most recent one. That is to say that UFOs are in fact real and they are not from this earth, as many skeptics have claimed. According to the new report from the Times, while the program was renamed and moved to the different part of the Pentagon, the effort remains active. It is now moving toward a whole new era of transparency, according to Luis Elizondo, the ex-director of its predecessor program. It no longer has to hide in the shadows, as he said. Known for the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force, it is now obligated to make further reports public. The big question is whether or not physical evidence will ever be presented in the form of an actual craft, or perhaps even artifacts or instruments from other worlds, spaceships, and even alien beings themselves. Elizondo, who took over the lead position of the Defense Department's UFO program in 2010, is among a small group of former government officials and scientists with security clearances who, without presenting physical proof, say they are convinced that objects of undetermined origin have crashed on Earth with materials retrieved for study. Its original purpose was to investigate flying foreign weapon threats, both ones being utilized and developed now, or ones that could be developed within the next 40 years. Within this process, there is a distinct chance that it may have stumbled upon the most significant UFO-related discovery in modern American history. So moving right along, this story comes to us from the Charlotte Observer. A longtime pilot photographs mysterious orange orb in daytime sky over North Carolina mountains. As a 45-year pilot, Charles Cobb had never seen anything like the orange-tinged orb high in the North Carolina mountains on a sunny late morning in June. The object was round and irregular, he said, and it would suddenly plummet tens of thousands of feet before soaring right back up, he said. Cobb, an 88-year-old Korean War combat veteran, spotted the mysterious object while sitting at a Silver Creek Airport in Morganton, where he visits each day to check on his 1940 Piper Club he keeps in a hangar. Minutes ticked by as the object and its exhaust plume hovered 30,000 to 40,000 feet high toward Table Rock. He was referring to the plateaued peak northeast of Asheville, North Carolina, that's a popular tourist destination for its panoramic views of the surrounding Linville Gorge, as described by AshevilleTrails.com. Cobb said he finally pulled out his iPad and took photos of the flying object in its opaque center. It was about 11:18 a.m. on June 12th. It was hard to tell his size, he said, although they distinctly recalled the craft dropping at times to maybe 15,000 feet before shooting back up to at least 30,000 feet. The object vanished at one point when he happened to look down at his iPad, but it soon reappeared, he said. The fact that it could zoom up almost out of sight made this no ordinary object, he's convinced. The craft was also flying parallel during the 15 to 20 minutes he watched it. He said so it couldn't have been a comet. Comets come toward you, he said. This object always pointed north. The Carolinas have been a well-documented hotbed for UFO sightings. One recent study had Charlotte beaming itself up into the ranking of the top 10 largest North American cities for total UFO sightings in the past century, the Observer previously reported. Other cities in the Carolinas made related lists for sightings per capita, including Wilmington, Asheville, and Myrtle Beach. The Queen City's 153 sightings of mysterious lights, disks, and orbs in the sky since 1910 had Charlotte ranked ninth among the top 25 largest cities by population and tops in North Carolina. The following day, no one reported a sighting similar to Cobb's that day to the nonprofit center, which maintains a public database of objective UFO data, according to its website. It offers an online form and telephone hotline to reporting sites. That is the San Francisco-based True People Search compiled the rankings based on sightings people sent to the National UFO Reporting Center in Davenport, Washington. At about 9 p.m., 10 hours later after Cobb's sighting, a Huntersville, North Carolina resident reported a sighting of bright light flares turning 90 degrees in the sky. At 5:25 the following morning, a Salisbury resident saw a spear or teardrop structure streaming across the sky with a vapor trail and cast off glare from the rising sun, according to the National UFO Reporting Center database. UFO experts have been excitedly poring over supposedly strange sighting over the U.S. skies this week. The headline comes from express.co.uk, and it's a UFO sighting, and it says, claim alien fleet spotted flying over California and something big is going on. The amateur video has gone viral online in the past few days because it apparently depicts an anomaly over Oakland, California. The 90-second long, poor quality clip seems to show more than a dozen bright lights clearly visible against brilliant blue sky. The person shooting the footage on the smartphone is heard sounding slightly dumbstruck by what he is seeing. Well-known alien life conspiracy theorist Scott Waring believes that the man has captured warrants further investigation. Mr. Waring took to his UFO sightings daily site to speculate about the highly dubious discovery. He said, "For the life of me, I just could not see any wings on these objects in the sky, but just like the witness, at first I thought it was a flock of birds, but it's not. Guys, this is a lot of UFOs moving fast and low over Oakland, California 3 days ago. Something big is going on for so many UFO sightings around the world to be occurring." The article goes on to say the UFOs often try to disguise themselves with cloaks, clouds, fog, impersonating planes, and even trying to look like birds. Be warned, Waring says, sometimes what you see is what aliens want you to see. The UFO enthusiast also includes quotes from the original and unnamed eyewitness of the so-called fleet of alien aircraft. They said, "A friend and I went on our break at Walmart when we noticed a silver-looking object crossing the sky. Then the sun was reflecting off of it as it spun. At first I thought it was helium balloon because of the color, but then my friend said it stopped moving. I then went to activate the recorder on my phone when I noticed a V-shaped formation of white lights crossing the blue sky. I started recording them instead of the silver thing. The V-shape suddenly changed to a C-shape as if on command. I knew they were not birds because they were moving too fast and these things did not have any wings flapping. They also stayed in perfect formation even when changing shape. They looked like tic-tacs or oval-shaped, no sound or exhaust. However, the latest sensationalist claims made by Mr. Waring are yet again easily debunked. The video has captured nothing more than exciting than a flock of white birds in formation. Looking at the video here, guys, it is a very poor quality. It's hard for me to tell that it's a flock of birds or what it is. I mean, it almost puts you in mind. Last week we did an article about the Starlink satellites. It almost puts you in mind of that, but they are moving pretty quick from what I can tell. So I don't know. This is an interesting, could be a possible actual UFO sighting. Moving right along, UFC fighter Diego Sanchez says he received a UFO visit and it was obviously watching me. This comes from FoxNews.com. UFC fighter Diego Sanchez said Wednesday he was definitely visited by a UFO. Sanchez, who lives in New Mexico, recalled the event on Twitter. New Mexico is a hotbed for UFO activity, according to June analysis from Satellite Internet. I was doing energy work on my patio as a UFO flew right up on me. I called for my daughter, quick. She watched this thing hover, only hundreds of feet away. Albuquerque is a trip. Sightings are regular here. The 38-year-old has had an impressive mixed martial arts career. He won his first 17 professional fights between 2002 and 2006. His first loss came in April of 2007 at UFC 69 against Josh Koscheck. Sanchez had wins over Nick Diaz, Paulo Thiago, Jim Miller, and Mickey Gall. Sanchez is not the only celebrity to have reportedly seen UFOs. Actor Kurt Russell caught in the Phoenix Lights a few years ago, if you remember the mysterious lights over Phoenix. Miley Cyrus says she has seen a UFO, made eye contact with an alien supposedly flying that UFO. Tom Cruise and Nick Jonas among the other celebrities that have claimed to have seen UFOs and believe in the existence of aliens. More and more sightings every day, and you think about is it maybe just the internet? Is it 24-hour news services? What is it that we are? Why are we hearing more and more about them? Now to a more impressive point, celebrities and folks, pilots and air traffic control and things of the like are coming forward with these sightings and these stories. Where years ago, they would have been chastised and made to feel a fool and run out of their career. I personally am super pumped that we get to hear all of these stories every day from different sources, and it's amazing to hear what some people have seen out there. And I look forward to many more. Goose, I'll hand it back to you, and looking forward to more of the show. Take care.
Be sure to check out HereToChewBubblegum.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Here to Chew Bubblegum. I am Goose. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to a personal friend of mine. The Creepy Kentuckian from DeadPit.com is our special guest on Here to Chew Bubblegum. Thank you very much, CK, for being here.
No problem at all, Goose. We go back a long time. What is it, about 14 years now? 14 years?
14, yeah, man, 14 years. And that doesn't seem real until you say it out loud like that.
Now, I was thinking back, it was right after we started the show. Thinking maybe 2006, 2007, that time frame there.
Let me see. Your first show was actually on New Year's Eve, 2015, correct?
2005.
I'm sorry, 2005.
Yeah.
And you're right. About probably 6 months later, I had listened to you guys for 6 months and finally gotten up the courage to reach out and contact you guys.
Yeah,
and
we had met over a warm KFC dinner in downtown Prestonsburg, Kentucky, and because back in those days, a lot of the Dead Pit, like as far as the Creepy Kentuckian and Uncle Bill, it was almost like a gimmick, like professional wrestlers or something like that. And all we talked about on the show, since we're from Kentucky, we talk about coal mining and KFC chicken, stuff like that. So
Eric C. Kahn.
Yeah, Eric C. Kahn was still among us here, and before he got locked up and all that. So it was a good time, and I'm happy to do the show. I'm glad that you're doing something creative again. I know you were making movies there for a while.
Yes,
and sometimes life gets in the way of things, and I'm glad that you're back doing something something creative, something you enjoy.
Well, thank you very much, brother. That really means a lot to me. I'm glad to be back. I've been a lot of people don't know, but I actually started out in radio many years ago when I was actually 14. And so I've always been a fan of you guys at Dead Pit and radio in general. And I'm glad to have you on. Glad to be doing the show. The success of the show so far and the short time that we've been on has really been mind-blowing to me. I want to ask you a first question. How did you come up with the Dead Pit idea?
As far as Dead Pit goes, really what fueled that idea was boredom. The concept of the show was based on a professional wrestling radio show that was based up in Canada called Live Audio Wrestling, which I think it was on up until probably 3 or 4 years ago. It'd been on for over 20 some years. And essentially the format of the Dead Pit show was the exact same format of Live Audio Wrestling. We kind of ripped it off, but it wasn't a wrestling show. It was a show based around horror movies and the horror culture, if you will. So, it evolved a little bit over the years, but, the concept of the show I did come up with, and Uncle Bill was kind of my cohort, and still is from time to time. And, we just started rock and roll in December of 2005, and it didn't slow down for quite a while there.
It just took a life on its own. I know you were talking about you borrowed off that show. You may not have realized this, but I borrowed off you guys when you guys used to do the midweek obliteration. I started out with the podcast doing like a midweek moment, and we'll do that every week, and I did, and I'll be the first to admit I got the ideas from you guys, because that was one of your aspects that I've always loved about your show is how you're so involved with your fans. And that's one of many aspects I borrowed from you guys, reading listener email, to me, when you can do a show that people like and it entertains them and you can interact with them also, that's just a great way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's fun. Like, as far as the midweek shows, that was something that just, at the time, it was originally the MySpace show. This was back when MySpace was a big thing. And it was kind of used as and I think that's what you're doing now, is hyping up the upcoming show later
Correct.
on in the week. So, yeah, I mean, we, I don't know how many, we're working on the Dead Pit Patreon page right now. And the concept of that is everything that we've ever done is going to be on there. So, in order as well. So, I will eventually know how many total shows that we've done. But at this point in time, I'm not even a year in, and I'm thinking it's already around 60 shows.
Right.
So it's kind of crazy the way we were going about it at the time. But, living in Eastern Kentucky, and still both of us are, not a whole lot to do around here. So I think that's part of it.
No, there's definitely not. Now, you guys interviewed a lot of guests on the show. I mean, one of my favorites that stands out that I've listened to at least probably 4 times was a John Carpenter interview.
Yes.
Who was not counting John Carpenter? Who was your favorite guest that you've ever interviewed on the show?
It's hard to pinpoint one particular guest. I mean, there's a few. You mentioned John Carpenter, which was, I mean, I've got bad anxiety as it is anyway. I've always been that way. But, man, the week leading up to that interview, because Carpenter himself would probably admit to you that he can get in bad moods, and he's got kind of a reputation. So we didn't know which Carpenter we were going to get, but he was great during the interview. George Romero, the director of the Dead trilogy, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead. We had an 4.5 interview with George Romero. He was awesome, down-to-earth guy. Angus Grimm from Phantasm, which is one of my favorite horror films of all time. It was great talking to him. But if I was really going to name one particular one that was personal favorite, it would have to be, it was December of 2006, so we're still within our first year. We did a interview with Bob Clark, who a lot of people may not know him by name, but I guarantee you know some of his movies.
Oh, yeah.
The reason we had him on there is he was promoting the first DVD release of his horror classic from the 70s, Black Christmas. But he would later go on to direct Christmas Story, which I'm sure everyone listening to this show, everyone out there has seen that multiple times.
Oh, yeah. There was a time I'd watch that for 24 hours straight.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and he also directed Porky's, which is another classic of a different genre as well. But he was just a really, really great guy. Had a lot. That was one of my favorite interviews, like I said. And I think that was one of the last interviews he ever did. He had passed away like less than 4 months after the interview in a car crash.
Car crash. Huh?
Yeah, he was one of my favorite ones, I think.
I actually remember that interview, and then I don't know if me and you ever talked about this. Shortly after he passed away, Howard Stern bought the rights to all the Porky's films, and he even did like a brief mention about Bob Clark passing away and so forth. But that's been, long, like 14 years ago. So
yeah, I haven't heard anything about, like, you would think Porky's would be a remake idea that. But I remember the interview, though. He was actually, this was near Christmas, Christmas Day, if I'm not mistaken, the day that we did the interview. And he was flipping through the channels. He's like, guess what's on, guys? It's a Christmas Story. So he was a really good guy, though.
So you guys did the show. You stepped away for a little bit. COVID-19 hits. you guys did like a reunion show that led up to like you guys doing the show again, on like a 2.0 version. How's things going with that?
Well, I mean, believe it or not, the show was coming back regardless if COVID hit or not. I was actually planning that anyway. Now, if Uncle Bill would have come back without the COVID, I don't know, because that wasn't originally the plan.
Right.
So my idea was I was just going to do a separate podcast, and it was like deadpit.com presents,
Right.
Sort of thing.
Now, do you realize you just used the word podcast?
Yes.
I know that used to be one of your pet peeves. You didn't like to use the word podcast.
Yeah, I mean, again, us being stubborn back in the day, we avoided the podcast word for years and years and years.
Right.
For 3 or 4 years, the show was never on iTunes. The only way you could listen to it was going to the website and downloading it. So, and that probably hindered us more than anything else, to be honest with you. So,
really?
Yes, I think that a few things that we did, just being stubborn, I mean, it's like, oh, it's not a podcast, because believe it or not, when we started this show, I don't even know if podcast was a term.
Right.
So we used Horror Talk Radio.
Right. And which is great. I guess a couple months ago, I was watching some stuff on the YouTube page, and it was the night after the premiere of Into the Pit, the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And Kelly said podcast, and you stopped him dead in his tracks. And
Right.
you know, it's fun now to, for me, and me and you to be friends, to look at stuff that we did back then. And then so many years later, come back and look at it again, because you're like, man, look at me,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the timing of everything too, to be honest with you, if someone attempted to do the show that we did in 2005, 2006 today, I don't think you would be able to do it. A lot of the interviews that we got, people, whenever we told them it was a Horror Talk radio show, they were intrigued. Right. And then you could go ahead and say, oh, it was internet radio. Still, I think the term podcast is around so much now. People are like, if you were to tell John Carpenter, hey, John Carpenter, big fan of the movies, I'm doing a podcast. Would you like to be on it? I just think that term, it kind of lessens what you're doing a little bit. But it's such a thing now. I mean, it's the best way to describe what we're doing, what you're doing. Everybody knows what a podcast is now. Right. In 2005, 2006, that was a very new term, if it was even out there. I'm not familiar with it. Right. So,
well, you mentioned that, you were, even if COVID hadn't hit, you were going to do something. So can we safely assume that, once everything hopefully gets back to normal with the world, that you're going to keep on doing the show? That's part one of the question.
Well, for me, I mean, I'm never going to go away completely again. I can't speak for Uncle Bill, but I think for like the first time in quite a few years, both of us are fans of the genre again, and we enjoy it. So, I mean, the way that the Dead Pit Revival podcasts and our live streams is they're not really set up on a regular basis. So whenever we get the itch and want to do something, we'll do it. It's not, and I mean, in a way, I would like us to be able to do a weekly show like we were doing before, but I don't want to get to the level of, it's at one point in time, we were doing so much, 2 shows a week for, you're talking every week with very rare misses for probably 5 straight years. Right. So we got burnt out on that. So, yeah, I mean, for me right now, I'm great with that. I'm good at doing what we're doing. But if COVID's, which I mean, I think COVID's going to be around for a while. There's nobody's denying that. It's this whole thing's a long way from being over, if it ever will be.
Yes, it is. But if the world does get back to a little bit of normal, and we start having conventions and stuff again, could we see the deadpit.com horror talk show at any conventions?
Yeah, I mean, in a couple, whenever the scene gets back to normal, if it is ever or gets more back to normal than it is now, I would totally be down for a few convention appearances. I know that we've already talked to Ken Daniels, who was wanting to do something this past fall in Louisville, which he did the Friday Night Film Fest for quite a while. But with everything happening, it didn't. He was hoping they'd be able to do it, but yeah, I mean, it's not. I don't think it's time yet for that. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be against doing appearances at shows again in some sort of limited way. I don't know if Uncle Bill, if Aaron would be able to do that, just because he's got about 17 kids. And
well, he can load the school bus up and come on down. So
yeah, we'd have to just get a couple more rooms for all those kids.
Uncle Bill Duggar, we could call him.
I really enjoyed the convention scene overall, though, and a lot of the parties that were held there, man, some legendary stuff.
Oh, I always had a blast, and there was one in particular. Hopefully, you don't care me mentioning it. I didn't give you a heads up beforehand on this.
No, you're fine. Whatever you
We
want
were
to do.
at, I think it was Scarefest 2012 or maybe 2011, and me and you had drove down, and Uncle Bill was coming that next day. Do you remember the one I'm talking about? So I was just kind of hanging around with you at the booth,
with
helping you sell stuff.
With me and Cody LL.
Cody LL. And this one guy comes up, and he's looking at stuff, and I'm talking to him, and he's like, I love your show. So, I have my glasses on and my hat, and I'm like, well, thanks. I appreciate that. And I ended up selling him, I think, some DVDs and a shirt. And he even had his picture took with me and you. And you remember when he walked off? I'm like, should I have done that? And we just laughed, But just, I mean, that was just some of the fun stuff, that goes on at conventions, I mean, here he thought he had met Uncle Bill in the Creepy Kentuckian, and he actually met Goose in the Creepy Kentuckian.
So that's a good thing, though, about the the radio show aspect, the podcast aspect of it. I mean, unless you actually look closely, you're not really going to know who the hell you're
right
talking to.
And but I mean, and I have told that story to people so many times before, and they always get a huge laugh out of it. That's right up there with my Robert Zadar story. And
yeah, Scarefest, man, I love that show. I mean, it was one of those shows that I think it just got too big.
Yeah.
So. And the last one I went to was probably 5 years ago at this point.
Well, the last one I actually went to was that one I was talking about with you just then, and I'm thinking that was 2012.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
I'm pretty sure it was. Well, we had some technical difficulties last week and didn't get to do a show. I'm hoping to put something together, tomorrow before our big show on Sunday. Our last question of the week that we had was, what is an unexplainable event that's happened to you? And we had a great response from that. I would like to ask you that same question. What is an unexplainable event that's happened to you?
Well, the big one that I'm sure I've told you before, and I know that fans of our show may have heard, but your listeners, I'm sure they haven't, unless they're tuning in just for me. I don't know. But the home that I'm currently in was my childhood home growing up. My parents raised me in it from an infant. So I've lived in this house most of my life.
Right.
So just up the hill from my house, there is a cemetery. It's about maybe 150 yards away from the house up on the hill. And my best friend growing up, you know him, Timmy. We'll just say Timmy. Yeah.
Timmy, yeah.
Which is funny. He lives right beside of me. So we talk about this from time to time because it's probably the scariest thing that's ever happened to either one of us, at least that can't be explained, right?
Right.
So kids growing up, we were like 10, 11 years old. This was like in the early 90s. We would often just go and walk around the cemetery, just have something to do, kick rocks, do what kids did back in the early 90s before the internet and all that.
Right.
So I believe it was like in the early summer, and quickly a quick summer storm started. The clouds got heavy, the wind started blowing, and all this. And we were headed back to the house, turned around, and we came across this old man standing at, I think it was like a World War II soldier's grave. He had a big furry, like a sheepdog, big furry white dog with him. And usually, you pass somebody at the cemetery, which we do from time to time, they'd acknowledge you or something like that. Would say, hey, waves or anything. This man just stood there staring down at that grave. And the dog really didn't do anything either. He didn't acknowledge us like we were there or anything passed by him, So Timmy and I passed by him, and, we, like I said, we get nothing at all from this man. So we're going by probably maybe 100 feet. Huge gust of wind comes along. And we end up just turning back around there, and that man and that dog are both nowhere to be seen. And this cemetery is up on a hill. That was an old man. There is no way within 10 seconds, without a vehicle or anything, he could be completely gone. But that was like probably the craziest unexplained event personally that I've had.
Now, every single time you've told me that story, even like right now, the hair on the back of my neck stands up.
Yeah. Now, I mean, we hightailed it to the house and we saw, I was like, what in the hell,
Have you ever thought about going back to see what grave he was near, to try to Google and see if you could find a picture of the guy, or, just from the name on the grave or anything like that?
I never tried to Google it, but we did go back. There's a video that I had shot with my dad. God, this has probably been 12, 13 years ago, where we were walking up around it, and I videoed it so I could go back and probably Google it at that point. I never thought about doing that, but yeah.
Yeah, you might be surprised. You might find a picture of the guy,
I'd really freak out. I wouldn't be able to sleep then. Oh, gosh.
You are on Here to Chew Bubblegum, and we do talk about UFOs and time travel and other dimensions and stuff along those lines. Have you ever saw a UFO?
No, I wish I would have, because I've always been very interested in that sort of thing. And I do believe that they exist in some form.
Right.
But as far as UFOs and aliens and all that good stuff, I've never experienced anything personally. But growing up, though, I mean, man, Unsolved Mysteries Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. The Sighting Show, it was like a syndicated show back in the day. Big into the Art Bell show, which I know you are too.
Yeah, I'm
Coast
a huge
to
fan of
Coast.
Art Bell.
Yeah. So always been into that sort of thing, but yeah, I personally I've never experienced anything like that.
Well, on the last show that we did, we talked about the train versus UFO incident that happened in Paintsville, Kentucky in 2002. Are you familiar with that?
Just from what you said on the show, I checked the show out. And I mean, I think ultimately, like, that's something happened that night for sure.
Yeah.
I think a lot of events like that are all based around something that really happened. But I mean, as far as in particular, if it was a UFO or what, who knows?
Right.
We'll probably never find that out.
Right. Well, and I'll tell you off the air, I do have a Freedom of Information request in on that incident, and I am doing an investigation on it, and I will keep everybody updated on that. But I'm like you. I do think that something did happen there, because there was just to me, there was too much detail in that story. And I had found through the course of my investigation a similar story that happened in, Indiana, years earlier. So that just wasn't the first time.
I'd never heard of that before, though. So you definitely informed me on the incident in Paintsville. I had no idea about that.
I also mentioned on my last show, this is an incident that I want to talk to you about, because I feel you may have a little insight on this, or not necessarily insight, but you're technical. You know technology. Um, in Pikeville, Kentucky, on October 16th, 2012, this story made local and national news that there was 2 rods spotted. Rods are basically UFOs that look like light bulbs, the big fluorescent light bulbs.
Mm-hmm.
But it was went on to say later that those were internet balloons. I didn't even know what an internet balloon was until I looked it up. Are you familiar with an internet balloon?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. Like, I don't know if they were, like you said, this was in 2012, right?
12, yeah. This was like 8 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to look that up. But I know, like, they use the internet balloons basically look like mini hot air balloons or whatever. Okay. And they use them for internet access in like more of the like a rural parts of the United States. So if it's in Pike County, not necessarily Pikeville, I don't know if you'd said it was Pike County or Pikeville.
No, it was in Pikeville. I think it was sited up near the airport. Okay. So that's close to the Floyd County line. So you think back in 2012 in Eastern Kentucky, they could possibly have been using those in our area, correct?
It's possible, but I would think if someone saw that, that would be the furthest thing from their mind if they thought that was a UFO, because it's just like, it looks like a little balloon.
Yeah, well, these the pictures of these, and I'll have to email or text these to you. These do not look like balloons; they look like rods.
Okay.
And if you're familiar with the UFO term rod, that's what they look like.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that would be internet balloons, just because that doesn't look anything like what you were saying. So
that's what I was thinking too. Plus, I mean, you're more technical than I am. To me, if somebody's going to be testing stuff in a rural area, we are a rural area. Why would they come here and do that in 2012? 8 years ago, when they're just now starting to put these out.
Right. I mean, you got to think too. In 2012, I mean, that's 8 years ago. So, I mean, the only thing I can think of is if it was internet balloons, it was near the airport. Maybe they provided the internet access to that airport.
Right.
Possibly.
Well, but there's nothing of the airport coming and saying, "Oh, these were internet balloons."
Okay. I don't know. That's just that'll have to remain a mystery for now.
There's no FAA logs or anything saying that there's going to be those internet balloons. I just thought that was interesting and wanted to get your opinion on that. All right, Roswell, do you think that it was extraterrestrial or a weather balloon?
There's no way it was a weather balloon. And I've always thought this because I've kind of followed this case. Well, not hardcore like you.
Right.
But I've seen, the TV shows and the Martin Sheen movie on Roswell. Great movie, by the way, if you've never seen it. But there was definitely something that went on there that was of unknown origin at the time. And I've always thought that. So, as far as retracting the story from the newspaper, I think that the federal government had somebody do that. That's just mine.
And I totally agree with you there. All right, their next question: do you think that there's humanoid life out there in the universe, not just plants and vegetation and stuff like that, but like humanoid life forms in other galaxies, other universes?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that it's more likely there is, just because, this is only just one planet. So, aliens, as far as being the little green men that you see in the movies, and, I mean, I don't know if that's the case or if they could just look like grasshoppers or what. I do think that there's something else out there that and here's my thing. Here's what I'm thinking too, because you have all kinds of people that say, "Oh, in the era of cell phones and all this, how come we don't have more definitive proof?" Right?
Right.
So it seems like more sightings came out back in the day than more recent. So I don't know if aliens themselves can sense, the technology that we've got and just don't, for safety reasons, don't come around as much anymore
Right.
or what. But I mean, it seems like a lot of, and you were mentioning this, I think, on the last show, a lot of technological advances took place after Roswell,
Yes. Yes, they
pretty
did.
quickly after it too.
Yes, they did.
So yeah, I mean, something that we may never find out exactly what, as far as what exactly happened in Roswell, or if there's maybe the government, they don't want to have us worried or whatever it is. But definitely, I think that there's something else out there aside from, us Earthlings here.
And I totally agree with you. And I've said this on the show. I think there's two different types of UFOs. I think there's an alien type of UFO that actually contains people from other planets, and I think we have UFOs that actually contain humans that we've manufactured ourselves.
Mhm.
And
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's very interesting. Like I said, as far as the UFOs go, I think at this point our technology has gotten so good that if they were real, or if they are real, they realize it's too dangerous for them to, make as
yeah,
many
yeah,
landings and touchdowns here on Earth. But yeah, I mean, as far as like a lot of the fighter jets, and I mean a lot of stuff, lithium batteries, maybe even. Um, so I think a lot of that stuff probably came
yeah.
from that in New Mexico there.
Yeah.
As far as the aspects of your show and all the different topics you can cover, I mean, yeah, that's a big one for sure.
Yeah. Well, folks, I want to thank our special guest, the Creepy Kentuckian, for joining us. You can check out CK and Uncle Bill, ST3B, and the rest of the guys over at deadpit.com. Thank you very much, CK, for being here. Is there anything you want to plug or say before you go?
Not really. I just want to thank you for having me on here. It's definitely a different sort of topic that I don't discuss quite as often. But if you're a fan of horror movies and classic movies and modern movies, check out our website over at deadpit.com. We've got stuff on there all the way back from 2005 and on, videos, podcasts, whatever you want to check out. So, but thanks, Goose, for having me on your show.
Oh, thank you very much for being here, and I look forward to having you back on sometime.
No problem at all. If you ever want to do a Bigfoot show, I'm down for that.
All right, but definitely. We've actually got some emails and stuff about that, so I'll definitely get up with you on that.
The Patterson Gimlin one in particular has always been very intriguing.
Okay, I'll start doing some research on that one.
Yeah, well, it might take a while. There's a lot on that, but yeah.
Okay. I've got a lot of time on my hands right now. So
That's true.
Situation I'm in.
Yeah.
So
And start investigating.
I definitely will. But thank you very much again. And that's CK from deadpit.com.
You're listening to Here to Chew Bubblegum with Goose. We'll be back after these messages.
Are you a horror movie fan?
Yeah, I dig horror movies.
Are you searching for a great internet horror talk radio show to listen to?
Why, sure, that sounds quite spiffy.
Then you need to tune into deadpit.com. It's the original horror talk radio show. Dead Pit is a show by the fans and for the fans. Uncensored and unbiased opinions are the goal of the show, giving fans honest reviews on new films and vintage classics of the horror genre. Make deadpit.com your #1 horror station destination.
Do you have a Roku device? Do you want to escape the everyday? Then download the Edge TV. That is the Edge TV on your Roku device, spelled capital T, capital H, #3. Let James, Stacy, Greg, and the rest of the gang keep you entertained. The Edge TV, available now on Roku. And welcome back. I want to thank the Creepy Kentuckian for his time and for that interview. I love talking to CK and look forward to having him back on the show very, very soon. We talked about some really good things there, and we even, before we did the interview, we had probably a 15 or 20 minute conversation. It's always good to talk to and catch up with the Creepy Kentuckian over at deadpit.com. Well, welcome back, and we are in a segment we've never done before. I've wanted to do this for quite a while. This segment is our listener-requested stories. Basically, people that have emailed us questions or telling us about stories over the last a month or so. We've saved those, and now we're going to talk about some of those stories that our listeners did request. The first one on our open topics, Billy from Kentucky suggested, have you heard about the Bell Witch from Tennessee? I used to be into ghost hunting and always wanted to work that location. Anyway, your show has motivated me to get back into paranormal investigations, and I want to say thank you for that. Billy, thank you very much. I have heard about the Bell Witch, and you're not the first person who has mentioned us doing a show on that or talking about it. So briefly, we're going to talk about the Bell Witch. The Bell Witch, or the Bell Witch haunting, is a legend from the southern United States. It's centered in around the Bell family in the 19th century, and it happened in Robertson County, Tennessee. Let's see. The former John Bell Sr. resided with his family along the Red River in an area currently near the town of Adams. According to the legend, from 1870 to 1821, his family and the local area came under attack by a mostly invisible entity. The entity was able to speak, affect the physical environment, and shapeshift. Some accounts record the spirit has also been clairvoyant and capable of crossing long distances with superhuman speed. Something that I did find interesting is that several accounts of this that got back to Andrew Jackson. And he was intrigued by this story, but his men were frightened away and after traveling to investigate. Moving on real quick, Craig from Pennsylvania asked, did you see the article where a UFO was captured on video over Boston recently? Well, Craig, I actually did see that. I think that happened back in September. I think that's the one that you're referring to. From the video and still pictures in the article, people do claim that it was a UFO. MUFON investigators later claimed that it was I think a JetBlue plane. I don't really see how they got that out of it. But the story goes, an unidentified flying object was filmed from a plane flying over Boston, Massachusetts earlier in August. Again, this happened in August of this year. The UFO sighting was filmed by New Hampshire resident Shauna, who saw the object from her plane window when traveling home from Puerto Rico. According to her account, the UFO was too small to be another plane and appeared to hover in the sky. Her video shows a white tic-tac-like object slowly drifting over the U.S. city. Shauna initially pulled her phone out to record the clouds in the city below when her partner noticed the mysterious-looking object. She told people on YouTube, I looked some more and then I just zoom in because it was a disc. It was just sitting there in the sky. I was just looking at it and I was like, what is this? It's too small to be a plane. It's way too low to be a plane. It's not moving. It's staying there. It's hovering. It didn't have any propellers on it, so it couldn't be a drone. Later on, let's see. However, UFO enthusiasts were disappointed to learn that UFO hoaxbusters have solved the mystery. According to MUFON, Canada investigator, the supposed alien disc was nothing more than a JetBlue Airways plane. Like I said, I saw the footage and still pictures of that. I think in September, and to me, it did not look like a plane. But, I'm not a MUFON investigator. Our last open topics subject, listener from Kansas, Renee writes, I heard you're doing an investigation into the train and UFO story. How about also doing an investigation into John Quincy St. Clair? He's an inventor and patented a lot of interesting things. No one seems to know anything about him, know who he is, where he's from, or can find out a lot about him. Well, thank you very much, Renee. Renee messaged that back at the end of October, and I'll be honest, before she messaged that, I had never heard of John Quincy St. Clair. I since then done a little research, and there is not a lot online about John Quincy St. Clair. Basically, John Quincy St. Clair in the early 2000s filed a bunch of patents. Some of them were rejected, some of them were not. The mysterious inventor John Quincy St. Clair filled some very interesting and exotic technology back in the early 2000s. The patent prospector has a write-up for groundbreaking walking through walls training system. Also filed patents on some of the following devices: a electric moment propulsion system, a hyperspace energy generator, hyperspace torque generator, a rotor inductive propulsion system, a magnetic vortex wormhole generator. He also invented and had a patent on the remote viewing amplifier. It goes on to say that he claimed he could use remote viewing to learn about other places in the galaxy that had life on them. If his last name really is St. Clair, that surname does have links to the Knights Templar. Some people speculate that this guy was just a hoaxer, that he was trying to be a Nikola Tesla flamboyant type ripoff. Some of his patents, and especially the ones, some of them's been rejected, some of them's not been rejected, are really interesting. His last patent submission was on April 28, 2008, and that was for the electric dipole moment propulsion system. No one has heard or saw anything from him since then, since April 28, 2008. Who he is, what happened to him, that all remains a mystery. Again, that is John Quincy St. Clair, and I want to thank Renee from Kansas for making me aware of Mr. St. Clair. Well, I guess it's time to wrap it up. I want to thank you guys for listening to Here to Chew Bubblegum. Also, very special thanks to the Creepy Kentuckian for being our very special guest on the show. Also, thanks to James, Stacy, Greg, and the rest of the gang over at The Edge Studios. That's The Edge Studios, spelled capital T, little h, number sign 3, The Edge Studios. As always, thanks to my friend Carlin for all the voiceover work and for allowing us to use the music of Flannery. Again, our question of the week: will disclosure happen in 2021? Don't forget, our midweek show will be coming up on this Wednesday. We hope to see you there, and thanks for listening. Until next time, I'm Goose, saying have a great week.
Thanks for listening to Here to Chew Bubblegum. Tune in next time as we dive deeper into things the government doesn't want us to know.